The Empire had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had conquered 200 star systems. They had crushed rebellions, destroyed fleets, and made entire civilizations bow before their power. Every species that met them responded the same way. They trembled, they begged, they surrendered. They had never known anything different. Captain Park stood on the bridge of her ship, the horizon's edge, and watched the massive space station grow larger on The station was called the Throne of Stars, and it was the heart of the Empire. It was bigger than anything humans had ever built. Rings of metal and crystal surrounded a central tower that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Warships floated around it in perfect formation, their weapons glowing with blue energy. "That is a lot of firepower," said Lieutenant. He stood at the communications station, his fingers moving over the controls. "I count 300 warships, maybe more." "They want us to be impressed," said Dr. Han. She was the ship's, an expert in alien cultures. She had studied them for years, but she had never seen them in person. "Everything about this is designed to make us feel small." Smiled, "Then let us not disappoint them." The Horizon's Edge was the first human ship to reach space. Earth had only discovered faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. In that time, humans had met several alien species. Most of them had warned Earth about "Do not anger them," the aliens said. "Do not resist them, just survive." But they had sent a message to Earth. They demanded that humans send representatives to the Throne of Stars. They wanted to see these new creatures who had entered their galaxy. Had volunteered for the mission. Some people called her brave, others called her crazy. She preferred to think of herself as curious. The ship docked at the station. The airlock opened with a hiss of pressure, straightened her uniform and stepped forward, and followed close behind. The corridor beyond the airlock was enormous. The ceiling was so high that could barely see it. The walls were made of black stone that seemed to absorb the light. Strange symbols were carved into the surface, glowing with soft purple energy. Soldiers lined both sides of the corridor. They were tall, almost 3 meters in height. Their bodies were covered in dark armor that looked like it had grown from their skin. Each one had 8 limbs, 4 for walking and 4 for fighting. Their heads were flat and wide, with dozens of small eyes that watched the humans with cold attention. None of them moved, none of them spoke, they just watched. "Friendly welcome," whispered. Studied the soldiers with professional interest. "They are trying to show us their strength. The formation is meant to make us feel surrounded, trapped." Kept walking. Her footsteps echoed in the massive space. She did not look at the soldiers. She looked straight ahead where a massive door waited at the end of the corridor. The door opened as they approached. Beyond it was the grandest room had ever seen. It was a throne room, but calling it that felt too simple. The chamber was so large that clouds floated near the ceiling. Holographic images filled the air, showing planets burning, fleets being destroyed, species kneeling in submission. Thousands of aliens from dozens of different species stood along the walls, all of them watching the humans with a mixture of fear and curiosity. And at the far end of the room, on a throne made of black crystal, sat the Emperor. Emperor was ancient. His armor was decorated with gold and gems, and his carapace had turned gray with age, but his eyes still burned with fierce intelligence. He had ruled the Empire for 3,000 years. He had personally led the conquest of 100 worlds. He was, by any measure, one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The humans walked toward the throne. The silence was complete. Every alien in the room held their breath. They had seen this ceremony many times before. The new species would approach. They would see the Emperor's power, and they would kneel. Stopped at the base of the throne. She looked up at the Emperor. She looked at his massive form, his glowing eyes, his throne of black crystal. She looked at the holographic displays of conquest and destruction. And she laughed. It started as a small sound, a chuckle that escaped her lips before she could stop it. Then it grew. Her shoulders shook. Tears formed in her eyes. She bent over, holding her stomach, and laughed harder than she had laughed in years. Stared at her in shock. Then he looked at the throne room again and his lips twitched. A moment later, he was laughing too. Tried to maintain her professional composure. She really did. But when she looked at the Emperor's confused expression, she could not help herself. She covered her mouth with her hand, but the laughter burst through anyway. The three humans stood in the heart of the most feared empire in the galaxy, and they laughed. The throne room was completely silent except for the sound of human laughter. No one moved. No one spoke. The aliens along the walls looked at each other in confusion. The soldiers gripped their weapons but did not know what to do. Emperor leaned forward on his throne. His translator device hummed as it tried to process the sound the humans were making. It failed. There was no word for this in the language. "What is this?" the Emperor demanded. His voice was deep and powerful, designed to inspire fear. "What are you doing?" Tried to control herself. She wiped tears from her eyes and took a deep breath. But when she looked up at the Emperor again, another wave of laughter hit her. "I am sorry," she managed to say between laughs. "I am so sorry. It is just the warships outside. They are arranged exactly like a toy I had as a child. And your throne, it looks exactly like a character from a comedy show on Earth. And the lighting," she gestured at the dramatic purple glow that filled the room. "It looks like a haunted house attraction." The Emperor's translator struggled with the words. Toy, comedy show, haunted house. None of these concepts existed in culture. "You are laughing," Advisor said slowly. He stood beside the Emperor's throne, his old eyes narrowed with suspicion. "You are laughing at the Emperor, at the Empire." "No, no," said, trying to catch her breath. "Well, yes, but not in a mean way. It is just, you tried so hard to be scary, and it is actually kind of adorable." The word adorable caused the translator to make a sound like a dying animal. Emperor had lived for 3,000 years. He had faced armies. He had faced assassins. He had faced rebellions and betrayals and wars that lasted centuries. But he had never faced this. He looked at the laughing humans. He looked at his advisors, who stared back with no answers. He looked at the thousands of aliens in his throne room, all of whom were watching with wide eyes and open mouths. For the first time in 3,000 years, Emperor did not know what to do. The Imperial Council chamber was smaller than the throne room, but it was no less impressive. The walls were lined with screens showing maps of conquered territories. A long table made of polished black stone sat in the center of the room. Around it sat the 12 highest advisors of the empire. Emperor sat at the head of the table. His expression was unreadable. His many eyes moved between his advisors, waiting for someone to explain what had just happened. Captain Park stood at the opposite end of the table. She had finally stopped laughing, but her cheeks were still red, and her eyes still sparkled with amusement. Lieutenant and Doctor stood beside her, both of them trying very hard to look serious. "Let me understand this," said Advisor. He was the oldest of the Emperor's advisors, nearly as ancient as the Emperor himself. "You entered the throne room, you saw the display of our power, and you laughed." "Yes," said. "Why?" Thought about how to explain it. This was not easy. She had studied alien cultures during her training, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. "Among humans," she said slowly, "laughter is a natural response to many things. Sometimes we laugh when we are happy. Sometimes we laugh when we are nervous. And sometimes we laugh when we see something that surprises us in a funny way." "Funny," repeated. His translator struggled with the word. "Our records show no equivalent concept in any of the 200 species we have encountered." "That is interesting," said. She stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her nervousness. "Are you saying that the do not have humor?" "Define humor," the Emperor said. It was the first time he had spoken since leaving the throne room. Opened her mouth, then closed it again. She looked at for help. was the communications officer. It was his job to translate difficult concepts. He had learned 17 alien languages during his career, but this was the hardest translation he had ever attempted. "Humor is the quality of being amusing," he said. "It is when something makes you feel a sudden burst of joy or surprise that comes out as laughter. It can come from things that are unexpected, or from things that are absurd, or from things that break the normal rules in a harmless way." The advisors looked at each other. Their translators hummed and clicked as they tried to process these ideas. "You are describing a malfunction," said one of the advisors, "a failure of emotional control." "No," said, "it is the opposite. It is emotional release. It is how humans deal with stress and fear and confusion. When something is too big or too scary or too strange, we sometimes laugh at it. It makes the thing less frightening." Emperor leaned forward. "You were afraid." "A little," admitted. "You have a very impressive empire. Your display of power was significant. But when I looked at it, all I could see were the things that reminded me of home. Silly things, small things, and the contrast between what you intended and what I saw, that was funny." "You laugh at things that frighten you," said slowly. "This is a survival mechanism." "Partly," said, "but it is also just part of who we are. Humans laugh many times every day. We laugh at jokes. We laugh at stories. We laugh with our friends and family. It is one of the most important parts of human social bonding." A holographic display flickered to life above the table. Ambassador appeared in the blue light. He was the senior human diplomat, speaking from a communication relay halfway across the galaxy. "I apologize for the delay," said. "I have been briefed on the situation. On behalf of Earth, I want to apologize for any offense we have caused." As he spoke, his eyes moved around the council chamber, taking in the massive advisors, the glowing screens, the ancient emperor on his throne. His lips twitched. Ambassador said quickly, "Please." "I am sorry," said, but he was clearly holding back laughter. "It is just. The reports did not do justice to the aesthetic choices." One of the advisors slammed his armored fist on the table. "This is an insult. They mock us. They mock the Empire." "We are not mocking," said. "We genuinely cannot help it. This is just how humans are." "Then humans are defective," the advisor snarled. "Perhaps," said calmly, "or perhaps we are just different." Emperor raised one of his hands and the chamber fell silent. He studied the humans for a long moment. His ancient eyes showed no emotion that could read. "In 10,000 years," he said, "no species has ever responded to the Empire this way. We have seen fear. We have seen despair. We have seen hopeless defiance and desperate pleading. We have never seen laughter." "We are sorry," said again. "Do not apologize," the Emperor said. "I am not offended, I am curious." This surprised the advisors. They looked at each other with uncertainty. "Your Majesty," said carefully, "these humans have insulted the throne. The proper response is clear. They should be executed as an example." "If we execute everyone who surprises us, we will learn nothing," the Emperor said. "These humans have shown us something new. That is rare. That is valuable." "They could be dangerous," another advisor said. "If they do not fear us, they cannot be controlled." "Exactly," the Emperor said. "That is what makes them interesting." Felt a strange mix of relief and concern. They were not going to be executed immediately. But being interesting to the Emperor was not necessarily a safe position either. "What do you want from us?" she asked. The Emperor considered the question. "I want to understand this. Laughter, this humor. You say it is a way of dealing with fear. You say it is a form of social bonding. You say it brings joy." "Yes," said. "I have ruled this empire for 3,000 years," the Emperor said. "I have brought order to the galaxy. I have crushed those who opposed me. I have created the most powerful civilization in known space." He paused. "I have never experienced joy." The words hung in the air. Saw something in the Emperor's eyes that she had not expected. Not anger, not curiosity, something deeper, something almost like longing. None of us have, said quietly. Joy is not a concept that exists in culture. We have satisfaction, we have triumph, we have the absence of pain, but joy, that is something else. Stepped forward. Your Majesty, if I may ask, do they ever play? Do your children have games? Do your people have entertainment? We have competitions, said. We have displays of skill, we have ceremonies. But nothing just for fun, asked. Nothing just because it feels good. The advisors looked confused. The concept did not translate. You see our problem, the Emperor said. You possess something we have never had, something we cannot even understand, and you came into my throne room and displayed it without shame or fear. I really am sorry about that, said. Stop apologizing, the Emperor said. I have made a decision. The advisors straightened in their seats. Whatever the Emperor decided, they would obey. That was the way of the Empire. The humans will remain on this station as my guests, the Emperor said. They will not be harmed. They will not be imprisoned. They will be studied. Studied, asked. I want to understand what you have, the Emperor said. This laughter, this joy, I want to know how it works. I want to know if it can be learned. He stood from his throne, his massive form casting a shadow over the entire table. You came here expecting to face the might of the Empire, he said. Instead, you have given me something I have not felt in 1,000 years. What is that? Asked. The Emperor's many eyes focused on her, with an intensity that made her want to step back. Hope, he said. 1 week passed on the throne of stars. The humans were given comfortable quarters in a section of the station that had once belonged to a conquered ambassador. The rooms were too large, and the furniture was designed for beings much bigger than humans, but they made it work. Captain Park stood by the window of her quarters, looking out at the endless stars. Behind her, Commander was packing back and forth across the room. I do not like this, said. She was the security chief for the mission, a serious woman who had served in Earth Space Forces for 20 years. We are being watched constantly. There are sensors in every room. Guards follow us everywhere we go. We are guests, said. Strange guests who did something unprecedented. Of course they are watching us. Guests do not usually have armed escorts. Guests might, turned from the window. The Emperor could have killed us. He chose not to. That means something. It means he wants to use us, said. I just do not know how. A chime sounded at the door. Press the control panel, and the door slid open to reveal a female. She was smaller than the soldiers, with a lighter-colored carapace and only 6 limbs instead of 8. Her eyes were larger and more expressive. I am researcher, she said. Her voice was softer than the other they had met. I have been assigned to study your species. May I come in? Stepped aside, of course. Entered the room and looked around with obvious curiosity. She saw the human decorations they had added, the photographs and small objects from Earth. She saw the way they had rearranged the furniture to make it more comfortable. You have changed things, she said. We like to make spaces feel like home, said. Made a note on a small device she carried. Interesting. The do not modify their environments. We adapt to spaces, not the other way around. She sat down on one of the large chairs, folding her limbs beneath her. She studied and with intense interest. I have many questions, she said. I hope you will help me understand your species. We will try, said. Good. My first question is about the incident in the throne room. Can you explain, in precise terms, why you laughed? Thought about it. I saw things that reminded me of harmless things from my home world. The contrast between the intended meaning and my personal associations created a feeling of absurdity. That feeling expressed itself as laughter. Wrote notes rapidly. Absurdity. This is when something does not match expectations. Sort of. It is when something is so different from what you expect that it becomes silly. When the gap between reality and expectation is so large that fear turns into amusement. I do not understand, admitted. The door chimed again. Ensign entered carrying a tray of food. He was the youngest member of the crew, barely 22 years old, with a bright smile and endless energy. I brought lunch, he said cheerfully. The food is actually pretty good once you get used to the texture. He saw and grinned. Oh, you are the researcher, I heard you were coming. Hi, I am. Stared at his smile, she wrote more notes. Why do you show your teeth? She asked. What? Oh, the smile touched his face. It is how humans show friendly feelings. It means I am happy to meet you. Among showing teeth is a threat display, said. Well, that is awkward, said, but he kept smiling anyway. I promise I am not threatening you. He set down the tray and sat beside. So what are we talking about? Researcher is trying to understand human laughter, said. Oh, that is easy, said. Want to hear a joke? Leaned forward. Yes, a joke is a verbal construction designed to produce laughter, correct. I have read about them, but I have never experienced one. Okay, said. He thought for a moment. Why did the spaceship cross the asteroid field? Considered the question seriously. To reach a destination on the other side, to escape pursuit, to take a shorter route despite the danger. To get to the other side, said, grinning. There was a pause. I do not understand, said. That is the most obvious answer. Why would that be a joke? That is the point, explained. The setup makes you expect a clever or complicated answer, but the actual answer is simple and obvious. The surprise of getting a boring answer when you expected something interesting. That is what makes it funny. Was quiet for a long moment. Her device recorded everything. Finally, she looked up. I have analyzed your explanation for 3 hours. I have consulted our databases and spoken with other researchers. None of us can understand why a boring answer would produce positive emotional responses. Looked disappointed. Maybe I need to try a different joke. Over the next several days, tried many different jokes. He tried puns. He tried wordplay. He tried stories with funny endings. Analyzed each one carefully and failed to find them amusing. But something else was happening. Commander noticed it first. She keeps coming back, said during a private meeting with the senior crew. I mean, she does not have to visit us every day, but she does. She is studying us, Lieutenant said. No, it is more than that, said. Watch her face when tells jokes. She does not understand them, but she watches him laugh. There is something in her eyes, something like hunger. Doctor nodded slowly. She wants to understand so badly. It is not just scientific curiosity. They have built their entire civilization on control and dominance. They have never experienced joy. When they see us laughing, they see something they never knew they were missing. That could be dangerous, said. Or it could be an opportunity, said. She had been thinking about this for days. They controlled the galaxy through fear. Every species they conquered was afraid of them. Every alliance they made was based on intimidation. They had absolute power, and they had no idea what to do with a species that did not fear them. The Emperor said he wanted to understand laughter, said. What if we actually taught him? Taught the Emperor how to laugh, looked skeptical. Is that even possible? I do not know, admitted. But think about what it would mean if he could learn. The most powerful being in the galaxy experiencing joy for the first time. That could change everything. Or he could decide we are too dangerous and destroy Earth, said. He could do that anyway, pointed out. At least this way, we have a chance to make a real connection. She stood up and straightened her uniform. I am going to request a meeting with the Emperor, she said. I am going to offer to teach him how to laugh. The others stared at her. That is either the bravest thing anyone has ever done, said, or the craziest. Smiled, why not both? 2 days later, she stood before the Emperor in his private council chamber. Advisor was there, watching with suspicious eyes. Researcher stood in the corner, recording everything. "You want to teach me to laugh," Emperor said. "You, a human who has been alive for barely 30 years, want to teach me something I have not experienced in 3,000. "Yes," said simply. "Why?" "Because you asked what we have that you do not. And I think the answer is not just laughter, it is joy. It is the ability to find light in darkness, to find hope in despair, to find absurdity in terror." She met his eyes without flinching. "You have everything, Your Majesty. Power, territory, time. But you do not have happiness. I think that might be the most important thing of all." The Emperor was silent for a long time. "Very well," he said finally, "teach me." The Emperor's private chambers were nothing like the grand throne room. They were simple, almost bare. The walls were plain gray metal. The furniture was functional. There were no holographic displays of conquest, no symbols of power. "I did not expect this," said as she entered. Emperor sat on a simple bench near a window that looked out at the stars. Without his ceremonial armor, he looked older, more tired. "The throne room is for show," he said. "This is where I actually live. I do not need reminders of my power when I am alone." Sat on a bench across from him. It was strange, being this close to the most feared being in the galaxy. He was massive, alien, ancient. But in this moment he seemed almost vulnerable. "Where do we begin?" the Emperor asked. Had thought about this carefully. "I think we begin with understanding. Before you can laugh, you need to understand why beings laugh. It is not just a sound. It is a release of emotion." "I understand emotion," the Emperor said. "I feel anger. I feel satisfaction. I feel contempt for my enemies and loyalty to my people." "Those are all hard emotions," said. "Laughter comes from softer ones: surprise, delight, relief, joy." "I do not know those words." "I know, that is what we need to fix." She pulled out a small device. "Lieutenant helped me put together some recordings. I want to show you something." The device projected a holographic image into the air. It showed a human child, a little girl maybe 4 years old. She was sitting in grass on Earth, and a small dog was licking her face. The girl was laughing so hard she could barely breathe. She kept pushing the dog away, and it kept coming back to lick her again. Each time, she laughed harder. The Emperor watched in silence. "What is happening?" he asked. "The child is playing with her pet," said. "The animal is showing affection. The child finds this delightful." "Delightful," the Emperor repeated. His translator hummed. "This word means something that causes pleasure." "Yes, but a specific kind of pleasure. Light pleasure, fun pleasure, not the satisfaction of victory or the relief of survival, just happiness for no practical reason." The Emperor studied the image. The child is not accomplishing anything. She is not learning a skill or defeating an enemy or building something useful. She is just experiencing this feeling. That is right. And this is valuable to humans. "It is one of the most valuable things we have," said. "These moments of pure joy, they do not accomplish anything practical, but they make life worth living." The Emperor was quiet for a long time. On the holographic display, the little girl finally managed to stand up, still giggling. The dog jumped around her feet, tail wagging. "When I was young," the Emperor said slowly, "there was a creature on my home world, small, covered in soft fur. It would come to me when I rested and press its body against mine. I do not know why. I remember feeling something, not satisfaction, not triumph, something else." "What happened to the creature?" "I was told it was making me weak. Attachment to lesser beings is not acceptable for future rulers. The creature was removed." Felt a sudden sadness. "I am sorry." "I had not thought about it in 2,000 years," the Emperor said. "Seeing this child with her animal, I remembered." They sat in silence, changed the recording to something else. This time it was a group of human adults at a party. Someone had told a joke, and everyone was laughing together. They were holding onto each other, their faces bright with joy. "Why do they touch each other?" the emperor asked. "Laughter is a shared experience," explained. "It brings people together. When we laugh with someone, we feel connected to them. We feel like we belong." "They do not touch each other unless we are fighting or mating," the emperor said. "That sounds lonely." "We are not lonely. We are independent, strong." "You can be strong and still want connection," said gently. "Humans are one of the physically weakest species in the galaxy. We survived because we connected with each other. We helped each other. We shared our joys and our sorrows." The emperor made a sound that might have been frustration. "Everything you describe sounds like weakness, needing others, feeling things for no practical reason, laughing at danger instead of preparing for it." "And yet here we are," said, "a weak species that does not fear you. Does that not make you curious about how we survive?" "Yes," the emperor admitted. "That is why I agreed to this." Showed him more recordings. Humans dancing at celebrations, children playing games, friends teasing each other with gentle jokes, an old couple holding hands and smiling at nothing in particular. The emperor watched everything with intense focus. He asked questions. What does this gesture mean? Why are they crying and laughing at the same time? What is the purpose of dancing? Hours passed, was growing tired, but she did not want to stop. Something was changing in the emperor's eyes, not understanding, not yet, but curiosity, interest, a tiny crack in the armor of 3,000 years. "I want to try something," she said. "I want to tell you a joke." Researcher has reported on ensign's attempts. None of them produced the expected response. "I know, but I want to try anyway. Will you listen?" The emperor nodded. Took a breath. A human and a walk into a throne room. The human sees all the displays of power and conquest. The says, "Are you afraid?" The human says, "No, I am just wondering where you got such a nice lamp." Silence. "That is the joke?" the emperor asked. "Yes, it is about taking something meant to be terrifying and seeing it as ordinary. It is what happened when I first arrived." "You truly saw my throne room as a lamp?" "Not exactly, but I saw it through human eyes. All your displays of power looked like things I had seen before in harmless contexts. The contrast between your intention and my perception was so large that it became absurd, and absurdity makes humans laugh." The emperor considered this. "You are saying that your laughter was not disrespect. It was a failure of translation. Your mind could not process my message correctly." "More than that," said. "My mind processed it and found it funny. There is a difference between not understanding and understanding in a different way." The emperor rose from his bench and walked to the window. His massive form blocked most of the starlight. "For 3,000 years," he said, "every species has seen my power and felt fear. You saw my power and felt amusement. I have been trying to understand this as a flaw in your species, but perhaps it is a flaw in mine." Before could respond, the door burst open. Advisor rushed in, his ancient face twisted with urgency. "Your Majesty," he said, "the Council has voted. They have decided that the humans are too dangerous to live. They have ordered the destruction of Earth." Felt her blood go cold. "On whose authority?" the Emperor demanded. "The Council invoked the protocol of existential threat," said. "A species that does not fear the Empire cannot be controlled. They voted while you were occupied with this." He looked at with something like disgust. "How long?" the Emperor asked. "The fleet leaves in 6 hours." His hands were shaking. 8 billion people on Earth, her family, her friends, everyone she had ever known. "Your Majesty," she said, and her voice cracked, "please." The Emperor turned to look at her. His ancient eyes studied her face, seeing the fear that was finally there. Real fear, not for herself but for her world. "It seems," he said slowly, "that I must make a choice." Imperial Council chamber was full. All 12 advisors sat at the long table. Behind them, holographic screens showed the fleet being prepared. 300 warships, armed with weapons that could crack planets in half. In 6 hours, they would leave for Earth. Captain Park stood at the end of the table. Her crew stood beside her. Lieutenant, doctor, commander, ensign. They had been brought here to witness the sentence being carried out. "The Council has decided," said Advisor. "Humanity represents an existential threat to the Empire. A species that does not fear us cannot be controlled. If word spreads that humans laughed at the Emperor and lived, others will stop fearing as well. Our entire system of order depends on fear. Without it, there is only chaos." Wanted to argue, she wanted to scream, but she forced herself to stay calm. "We are not a threat," she said. "We do not want war. We do not want to harm your empire. We just want to exist." "Your existence is the threat," another advisor said. "You cannot help what you are, and what you are is dangerous." The doors at the far end of the chamber opened. Emperor entered, walking slowly. He had put on his ceremonial armor again. The gold and gems caught the light. His ancient eyes swept across the room. "Your Majesty," said, "the Council has voted. The protocol of existential threat has been invoked. Your approval is required to proceed." The Emperor walked to his place at the head of the table. He did not sit. He stood there, looking at each of his advisors in turn. "Tell me again," he said, "why we must destroy Earth." "Because they do not fear us," said. "And why is that a threat?" "Because fear is how we maintain control. Fear is how we keep order. Without fear, the Empire falls apart." The Emperor nodded slowly. "So our power depends entirely on other species being afraid of us. Is that what you are saying?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "And if a species exists that does not fear us, we must destroy them, because we have no other way to interact with them." Hesitated. "That is correct." "Then we are weak." The words fell like stones into still water. The advisors looked at each other in shock. "Your Majesty," said. "We are weak," the Emperor repeated. "Our entire empire, our 10,000 years of conquest, our 200 star systems, all of it depends on other beings being afraid of us. We cannot inspire loyalty. We cannot earn respect. We can only create fear. And when we meet a species that does not feel fear, we are helpless." "We are not helpless," an advisor protested. "We have the most powerful fleet in the galaxy." "And what good is power if we can only use it to destroy?" The Emperor's voice was rising. "What have we built in 10,000 years? An empire of terror, a civilization of control, and we are so fragile that the sound of laughter can break us." He turned to look at. "You asked me a question in my chambers," he said. "You asked if our power made us happy. No one has ever asked me that before. In 3,000 years of rule, no one has ever wondered if I was happy." "Are you?" asked softly. "No," the Emperor said. "I am not. I have everything. Power beyond measure. Life beyond natural limits. Control over 100 billion beings. And I have never once experienced what that human child felt playing with her small animal." The advisors were staring at their Emperor with a mixture of confusion and fear. "You spent hours with the human," said slowly. "She has corrupted your judgment. This is exactly why they are dangerous." "She has not corrupted me," the Emperor said. "She has shown me what we are missing. She has shown me that there is more to existence than power and fear and control." He looked around the chamber. "She has shown me that in 10,000 years of conquest, we have never once truly lived." He walked toward, his massive form towered over her, but she did not step back. She met his eyes without flinching. "I watched a recording of a human child laughing," the Emperor said. "Do you know what I felt?" "What?" "Longing. I have lived for 3,000 years. I have never laughed. I have never played. I have never experienced joy. And watching that child, I realized what we have done to ourselves, what we have done to our entire species." He turned to face the council. "I will not approve the destruction of Earth," he said. "Your Majesty," said urgently, "the council has voted. The protocol has been invoked." "Then I invoke the protocol of imperial authority. My word overrides the council in matters of existential importance." He looked at each advisor in turn. "And I say that the true existential threat is not humanity. It is us. It is what we have become." The chamber was silent. "These humans came into our throne room and laughed," the Emperor continued. "They saw our displays of power and found them funny, and our response was to decide they must die, not because they attacked us, not because they threatened us, but because they were not afraid." He shook his head slowly. "That is the behavior of a frightened child, not an empire. We are so terrified of losing control that we would destroy an entire species, rather than admit that our way might not be the only way." "What do you propose instead?" asked. "I propose something we have never done before. I propose that we learn." He gestured to the humans. "These beings have something we do not. They have joy. They have laughter. They have the ability to face darkness and find light in it. They have survived not through fear and control, but through connection and hope." He looked at. "Captain Park offered to teach me how to laugh. I want to extend that offer to the entire empire. Let human researchers come to our worlds. Let them show us what we have been missing. Let them teach us to be more than we are." "This is madness," whispered. "Perhaps," the Emperor said, "or perhaps it is the sanest thing I have done in 3,000 years." 1 year later, stood on the observation deck of the Throne of Stars. Through the window, she could see a research vessel preparing to depart for Earth. It carried scientists, scholars, and diplomats. They were going to attend comedy shows and watch children play and study human art and music. Most of them did not understand what they would find, but they wanted to learn. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Empire wanted to learn something instead of conquer it. The door opened behind her. Emperor entered, moving slowly. He stood beside her at the window. "How are the lessons going?" asked. "Slowly," the Emperor admitted. "It is difficult to change patterns that are 3,000 years old, but my people are trying. Some of them are even beginning to understand." "And you?" The Emperor was quiet for a moment. Then he made a sound. It was rough and mechanical, nothing like human laughter. But his shoulders moved slightly and his eyes crinkled in a way they never had before. "Researcher showed me a recording yesterday," he said. "Ensign was trying to teach her a joke about a spaceship crossing an asteroid field. She did not understand, but he kept explaining and explaining, getting more and more enthusiastic. His face turned red with effort. He made the sound again. I do not know why, but watching him try so hard to explain something so simple, I felt something, something light, something unexpected, and this sound came out." Smiled. "That sounds like the beginning of laughter." "It felt strange," the Emperor said. "Strange, but not bad at all." They stood together in silence, watching the research vessel depart for Earth. The stars stretched out before them, vast and cold and beautiful. "You know what you have done," the Emperor said. "You have changed the course of galactic history, the most feared empire in the universe, transformed by laughter." "I did not do anything special," said. "I just could not help being human." "That," the Emperor said, "is what makes your species remarkable. You cannot help being what you are. And what you are is something we never imagined could exist. Something bright in a dark galaxy. Something that laughs at fear." He looked at her with those ancient eyes. "The galaxy needed humans," he said. "We just did not know it yet." Far below, in the heart of the station, Ensign was telling another joke to a group of young researchers. They did not understand it. They probably would not understand it for years. But they were listening. They were trying. And somewhere in the crowd, one of them made a small sound. Something rough and unfamiliar. something that might, with time and practice, become laughter. It was a beginning,